Dal Chodha, welcome back to Show Studio.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to kind of dive straight in.
I really love Martine. I think everybody does. And actually, love is probably the wrong word. I think it's respect, we should probably say. And I really respect her vision and her commitment to the kind of people that she wants to make clothes for and the characters that she wants to dress. I think what was interesting is that, of course, for a designer who's so embedded in a city like London, her clothes are always seen within this context. You know, the opportunity for any designer to show in Pitti or like with Bianca Sordens in Paris, it's sort of yanked out of its frame. And I think what Martine seemed to be really conscious of was that it was somewhere else. And actually, how does this work in another country? And not just another country, but also a place like Florence and a place like Pitti. You know, it's all having to work on lots of different levels. And I think she really managed to make what she does relatable to that new architecture and to that new environment. And, you know, in an easy way, it's about casting the right people. And she had lots of people from Florence. She had lots of people who were engaged in similar or adjacent cultures to the things she's interested in here. But the clothes themselves, I mean, they didn't really change, I think, from what she shows here. I thought she just did what she does really, really well. Perhaps we could say they were slightly more elegant, but I again worry that we're only saying that because it was in Italy and because there's that expectation that they would be. But I thought it was super strong and really nice to see a collection like that work on a bigger stage, because sometimes there is that concern that London is too small and our British designers always kind of tend to leave us. I think there's something really joyous and exciting about 3 black British women, Grace included, having these moments. I think that's a really exciting time, and in years to come, we'll need to have books written about it. Yes. Yeah, yes, in a way, but I mean, I think what it did is, what was interesting was that when it happened, I saw it play out online, you know, people's opinions about it, where they were reminded of the brutality of this industry. You know, I think everybody kind of likes to think that once you reach a certain point and once you achieve a certain level of success, whatever that looks like to you, that you're safe and it's done. And I think his departure really surprised people because everybody thought, well, it's kind of working and it sells lots of stuff. We all believed that that's what's happening. And I think it seemed to make a generation of fashion fans sit up and kind of go, oh, okay, you can still be generating this amount of, let's be crude, money for this company. You can still be selling all this stuff. You can still be everywhere. And actually you become expendable. You know, that's still not enough. Jacinda Ardern resigning in New Zealand has made me think that this just should happen in a lot more disciplines, perhaps creative ones too. You know, there's something very graceful about what she's done. But I think in fashion, boy, would life be a lot better if people actually realize when they were at full capacity and when they've said or they've wanted to say or actually are able to say and said, you know what, let's get somebody else in here. And I think in this instance, somebody said it for Alessandro. I thought the collection looked really good. I mean, I really liked it. And yes, sure, it's a kind of cobbled together idea of what most of us, I think, would do if we had access to the archives. You know, they weren't the only, there were another couple of houses, I think, that, well, lots of people reference their archives, right? It's the thing to do, but particularly you do that when you don't have a named artistic or creative director. And, you know, the design team there are obviously super smart and they're obviously really good marketeers because they picked the moments in the way that Dolce did for Spring Summer 23 with their Kim Kardashian collaboration. They picked the Y2K moments, right? And now we're getting the Y2K. We've seen that a lot in women's wear, and we're now getting Y2K in menswear, which does mean that you get Tom Ford back at Gucci. I think we've got to remember that, you know, that fashion cycle of 20-year things coming back around is happening for the first time where we can all pull up the image from 20 years ago. You know, before we all communicated in the way that we do today, there was no real way of doing that. You just had the knowledge or you didn't. Whereas now we all have that knowledge because it's all in our external brains, which is our phones and our computers. So it's an interesting moment for visual culture because you've got all of these kind of broken images. So we can easily throw up, and I see this happening a lot online, and I do it myself. You know, you kind of whip up an image from 20 years ago next to a more recent one, and quite often they are exactly the same. Whether they're being directly related to each other or not is a different thing. You may be making that relation, or the designer, the photographer, whatever you're putting up might have consciously done it. But I think, yeah, we're able to trace the archive in a new way. That is creating some problems, I think, for design, because it's creating designs for photography. It's creating problems for all visual culture, because you are so seduced by the past. We all are, you know, some amazing images. Every single one of us will have an image of, you know, from Nick's archive or any magazine campaign that you remember when you were sort of 12 or 13. And that's always in the back of your mind, and designers are no different. But the pressure they're under to be new, but also a bit of the old, is really a difficult one to navigate. I also think the idea that, you know, we have journalists or writers or commentators seeing a bag that's been made in the shape of a baguette for a loaf of bread and still thinking that the collection has something to do with cost of living crisis or the economy is laughable. You know, that bag is TikTok design, so that's why that's been done. It's been done so that certain people can wear it on TikTok and have fun with it, and that's absolutely right. There should be those moments in a fashion show, so there's nothing wrong with that. I think the overall look of Fendi, that you're right, did slightly change. It felt slightly more elegant, slightly less sort of logo-fied and less flashy than it has done previously. May suggest a slightly new design direction, but I don't know whether it has anything to do really with the wider kind of state of the world. Of course, we all like to think so, but for me, it just didn't really. It just looked nice. It didn't really have anything more going on for me. No, I'm not a huge fan of Raf's strong arming of what he's into, but placing that onto other brands. You know, we saw that at Calvin. There were bits of it at Dior, but the Dior women's I thought was quite nice, but it didn't work because perhaps people didn't want to dress like that, who knows? And I think he's stripped something away from Prada, and he's put a lot of himself in there, which again, you know, that was the point. That is the kind of exercise happening, right? You know, he's always named as well as Miuccia. So the two of them are named all the time. So there's this conscious effort to maintain this kind of, I guess, creative hand. You kind of always see that he's there. I thought it was really just good stuff, you know, really nice stuff. I thought the styling was really sharp. I really enjoyed those collars with the kind of little, but particularly when you see them moving in the show, they sort of flap gently, and there's something very pleasing in the materiality of it. Whereas when you look at pictures of it, it does look quite hard and stark and serious, but there's a certain kind of humour to the flapping Peter Pan collar that I thought was really wonderful. So I really like the collection. Do I think Raf will take over completely? Who knows? It's anyone's guess. I think it's always happened. It's always happened. But what's different now is it feels like something that not just designers who are about to start their careers are doing. It feels like something young people are just doing generally. You know, of course, I'm privy to these kind of conversations because I work with young people who are studying their degrees in MAs at St. Martin's. So there is a sense of, actually, what does this city offer me? What does this country offer me? You know, I think the UK has, maybe rightfully so, pretty shit PR at the moment. You know, there are lots of reasons to kind of question, why is life so hard here? Why is it so difficult to do the things that perhaps in other cities as a young creative person feel like they're a lot easier? So I really have sympathy for, you know, all of us living in a city like London, because it is super hard. I don't think enough people come to London to see the shows for whatever reason. I don't know what that reason is. That's for, you know, other people to try and work out, I guess. But there is a sense that if you show somewhere else, well, somewhere else, I mean, let's be honest, it's still the classic kind of Paris or Milan. No one, to my knowledge, is going to New York to show their collections from here. Then you will be taken more seriously. It's a good question. There's no million-dollar answer. You just have to protect yourself. You just have to have. I think the people that give you life online, the people that double tap stuff, the people that make you feel famous, the people that tickle your ego, I think if you understand and keep them online and don't surround yourself IRL with those people, I think you'll be fine. So my advice to anyone in that position is to just make sure that the sort of adulation that we're all very naturally designed to feed off of. There's nothing wrong with that either. These are talented people you're talking about. It's okay to have an ego and you know that you're good at something. But I think if you expect that to happen everywhere you go, i.e. at home or with your friends or then with your family or in real life, that's where things become quite dangerous. You know, there's something really important about, and all of you, if anyone watches this, when you have somebody that's kind of really good at what they do and they're around you, you should always be really conscious of bringing them back down to earth in some way. That doesn't mean being mean to them. That doesn't mean being, dismissive of their talent or their skill. But I think there's something in just being reminded, like, to get over yourself. Sadly, our industry is not designed to do that. You know, there are vultures here that will make it their business to tell you how amazing you are. And my huge concern always for our graduates is that they start coming in, those claws start coming in the first year into the building. And I really see my role as, and my colleagues as protecting them from some of that stuff, because that's what is really hard. What that collection in particular kind of showed to me is how important it is to do a second look. We're so used to, because we work so fast, is to look at something, have an opinion, and then move on. And I forced myself to prepare for you, to look at everything again. And I really surprised myself, because my initial thoughts on that collection were I was horrified by a lot of it. I thought it was horrible. And I looked at the show, and I looked at it again, and I was like, actually, a lot of this is kind of quite nice. The clothes kind of didn't feel that as kitsch or as silly as I thought they did before. And I thought a lot of it did feel quite faithful to the things we've seen before from Virgil. I think I do have a slight problem with the guest creative director thing. I don't know what that's all about, you know, because we know that creative directors, we have to give them more time, which I'm fascinated in how long it's taking Vuitton to fill that position. And, you know, there are rumours abound of who's been offered it and who's turned it down and all of that stuff. And there must be something wrong with the offering. There's something going on that is not attractive to people. And that's what I'm trying to understand. You know, I think it's a very over-the-top way to sell hold-alls. It's no secret, really adore Rick Owens, because he ticks every single box for every single person that's engaging with fashion. Even if you don't like what he does, it's very difficult to not be convinced by the world that he's creating. I think there's always kind of, what I like about Rick and this show in particular, it's always elegant, it's always seductive, it's always dangerous, it's always sexy. It's also always really scary. And I again, when I'm thinking about modernity and I'm thinking about clothes that, you know, slap me around the face and can make me go, oh, what's that? Like, who's going to wear that? And, you know, those stupid questions that you ask yourself. Rick's shows do that, right? You look at that and think, oh, no one's going to wear that. And then you see someone wearing it. You know, there's a real commitment to dressing for purpose, for everybody around you, for the theatre of it, but it's all done in this kind of very generous way. There's a generosity about Rick Owens that I've always loved. And I think that show in particular, what threw me was Victorian David Beckham being there, but that's a side note. But actually, them being there is an interesting point of contrast, because you do sort of look at them and then look at things, and then it kind of snaps you out of it, but it makes you think about fashion in a different way. But I thought Rick's collection, and particularly, again, we're living in an age where people are terrified to reference cultures that are not their own, communities that are not their own. And I think it's just really nice when somebody is open enough to say, yes, I'm going to look at Egypt. I'm not from Egypt. I don't, you know, what he knows about the culture, and I know he'll know a lot, but there's something really, I think is a really healthy message to a younger generation to say you can borrow from the world as long as you understand what you're borrowing and you interpret it in a way that feels both respectful but also new. And I think that's what you get with Rick when he's pulling on these cultures, or other places or other things that you may not have heard of. It's always through his lens. There's never any anxiety about it. It's got confidence, it's got balls. And I think oftentimes when designers are scared about referencing other places because they can't hack it, they're not thinking about it intelligently. I think Kim's career at luxury brand houses, including Fendi, but also looking at Vuitton before, something I struggle with is that I do think Kim is an excellent designer, but there's something very heavy-handed about everything that he does. You know, it's so kind of, there's this interesting thing that I've been thinking about recently about the period of fashion that was about buying a look. Like you would go to a designer and buy a look, head to toe. And I think Dior, because of the size of it, but also Kim in the way that he's working, it's still very that. It's like you don't look at those things and think, okay, I can just get that and it makes sense, or just that coat makes sense. It's not interchangeable. There's a request for you to kind of get everything from head to toe, and there's often so much crammed in those shows. You know, the styling is like, it's a hat, it's 2 bags, it's a scarf, it's gloves, it's belts, it's like wallets hanging off. It's just a lot of stuff. And it feels so heavy to me every season. This collection, I thought there were some beautiful moments. Kim is a very good designer at looking, I think he's one of those designers that knows about the, you know, people talk about the codes, right? The house codes, and about what does this brand mean. He's really good at underpinning and reusing those things, which is what he's done at Dior. So I think there were some moments in the show that I really loved. There was these jackets that were kind of folded up and had these loops underneath. Like, there were some amazing bits, there's some amazing pieces in there. But as an overall statement, I think, yes, it felt darker, but I don't know how much that might tell us about where he's going or how long he's there for. What I think is exciting about LOEWE is that Jonathan takes risks. He knows that most people will go there for the most exquisite kind of soft leather bags and accessories, right, and shoes. That's kind of, he knows that, and it means that he can really make much bigger intellectual statements with the runways, and I think this is what he's doing here. I like the idea that we have romanticized craft to the point of it being just like, you know, really just boring. You know, it's not interesting to know that something's really well made, I don't think. And I think everyone's got that kind of fatigue. What I thought was really fascinating is that those kind of hammered copper coats and that sort of structure, all of those were videos that were posted on the brand social media. And I thought that was so exciting, because quite often when you watch those artisanal videos, you know, it's someone making a pair of shoes, or it's someone making a Birkin bag, or it's someone making a thing that we know what's going to end up at the end. And I think with that, having the atelier use that amazing kind of knowledge and craftsmanship, but to make something that is an object, basically, a fashion object. I love LOEWE for that reductionist. A lot of it is silly. I mean, it's the kind of brilliantly Zoolander-ish moment. You know, it's the stuff that will be on the front of a tabloid newspaper, of like, what is this? This is fashion. I think most of it was. You know, it's the stuff that your parents would look at and think, what the hell is going on? But I think those of us that know there's a lot more going on, and there's something kind of exciting about that. You know, if you get it, you get it, and if you don't, then you never will. And I think Jonathan knows that every single reference is so aimed at a very specific knowledge, and if you don't have it, then you're not part of the conversation, and there's something quite funny about that. Again, the power of the second look. I saw it and I thought it was vile, and then I looked at it again and I was like, no, hang on a minute, this is really not that. Vile's perhaps a bit strong, but it didn't really speak to me. I thought what was really great is that it had confidence, finally. You know, I think there's always been a bit of a imposter syndrome that's felt, I can feel in some of his previous shows. I don't think he should be doing women's wear at all, but menswear is where he's safe. I thought the styling was excellent. The layering of things, you know, the sort of elongated, the jumper, but with this kind of smart couture, almost, it was couture, I think, it was made in the ateliers, smart kind of jacket. The combination of a hoodie and a jumper and a dinner jacket and a smart trouser, and, you know, it really, I think we've now kind of, the death of streetwear has well and truly happened. And I love the idea that we can now see elements of that's been borrowed from that. So a jersey hooded sweatshirt, or a elongated kind of knit, or a shoe that isn't a sneaker but it's not a formal shoe, all that, those sorts of hybrids. I thought this was a really strong collection for actually looking at, perhaps it's a good collection for us to try and work out how to describe things now. You know, is this streetwear? No. Is this formal wear? No. Is this, what is it? And I think actually that's quite a nice exercise for us to kind of look at that and see perhaps this is kind of where we're at. It's all of these things and none of them. But I thought it had a real confidence, and I thought there were lots of lessons to be learned there in how to get dressed in the morning. I mean, there's something very independent about Galliano's approach and spirit, and the things that he produces. It almost sits in its own. It's like one of these. It's sort of just out there on its own. So it's really weird to talk about it in the context of menswear, because it's not really that proper, or couture, because it's kind of that, but it's not, or women's wear, but it's kind of that, and it's not. Again, it's one of these kind of amorphous things that actually needs and has taken up its own space since he's been at Margiela, which I think is the exciting thing. It is what it is. You know, it's completely, again, with Rick Owens, you get that real faithfulness. I trust this person to give me X, Y, Z. I think you get that with John Galliano, and you definitely get that with what he's doing at Margiela. And I think there's something about it that isn't modern at all, but it never has been. But if you really do want the drama and the storytelling and the fantasy, then there's no one better to do that for you.